Hello, and welcome to the CCNA Flick, Facts Loaded with Integrated Concepts, ICND1, or better known as the CCN. My name is Alim H. And oh, by the way, I'm this handsome gentleman to the right. And I'll be your host and trainer throughout this Cisco series. Now, I know this may be the first time that you're viewing this clip, or flick for that matter, and I'll get to the means of those in a sec. But maybe this is the first time that you're taking such a training course for either entry into the IT world or for refreshing your knowledge to get recertified in Cisco CCNA. Well, in this clip, we're going to talk about exactly what is AHAVTS and the CCNA Flick, and also what you get yourself into. We're also going to talk about the Cisco CCNA history, exactly where it started out in the late 1990s to where it is today. We're also going to talk about the Cisco certification tiers. Now, after you finish watching this VTS series and you gung-ho when you're going to take the CCNA exam and you passed it with tears in your eye, you may want to consider moving to another tier within the Cisco certification tracks. Next, we're going to talk about the CCNA exam, where to register for it, as well as to find additional information. Next, we're going to talk about how to prepare for the exam. Just a few key tips and pointers in your preparation for the CCNA exam, as well as any other exams you wanted to take. And last, how to get the most of the CCNA Flick. So, let's get started. So what is AHAVTS? Well, the AHA stands for my initials, Alim H. And the VTS stands for Video Training Series, such as those for Cisco or Microsoft, or any other industry-leading certification that AHAVTS has to offer. It's a revolutionary concept of bringing to you video training without all that extra of a badge that you might find in traditional classroom lecture. Now at AHAVTS, each VTS is broken into something called a FLIC, which stands for Facts Loaded with Integrated Concepts, because in actuality, you are in essence watching a full-length movie. Now a DVD movie is about an hour, hour and a half, or maybe 2 hours in length, depending on the movie type. Well, these flicks are about 7 to 10 hours in length, but nonetheless, they're still kind of considered a movie. Now within each one of these flicks is something called CLIPS, which stands for Knowledge Leverage into Practical Strategies. Now back to the DVD analogy, there are chapters within the DVD that are about 4 to 6 minutes in length that you could jump to a particular scene if you wanted to. Well, consider these clips to be like chapters in the flick. Instead of being 4 to 6 minutes in length, these clips are roughly about 30 to 45 minutes long. So I'm hoping that I won't bore you and put you to sleep while you're viewing these clips. And that brings me to my next point. There's no snoozing allowed. You're not allowed to fall asleep while watching these clips. So I'm going to do my best to make these clips as robust as possible to keep you entertained. Now, these clips and flick for that matter are not scripted, and there's no extra padding that you might find in a textbook or in any other peripheral studying that you may be doing. Everything I do is live at the time of the recordings. So if I make a mistake, well, we made the mistake together. And yes, I'm going to drag you down with me. No, the point I'm making is that nothing is perfect, and in the real world, mistakes do happen. And if we make a mistake, and here I go again, we made a mistake. And if we make a mistake, well, we're going to find out what the mistake is, then I'll pause the recording, come back, explain the mistake and the solution, and we'll keep it moving. Now, time is a factor. Time is a factor for everyone. We all cannot get to a classroom and then maintain a full-time gig and then study and work out 4 to 5 times a week like how I do and repeat the cycle and try to stay ahead of technology because there's so much that we're allotted in a day to do, there isn't enough time. I mean, this is like Moore's law of IT training because there's so much technology out there and it's ever changing. So here with these flicks, you don't have to run to a classroom every evening. You can rewind, fast forward, pause, take a break, and come back to where you left off. And the motto of AHAVTS is that you can view these at any time, any place, and at your own pace. Now I urge you to take notes. Take notes as much as you can because it will assist in the retention process. Keep a pen and paper handy, and when you're viewing these clips, jot down those key concepts and ideas. And if those concepts and ideas went by a bit too fast, well, you can just rewind and play the clip again. That's the beauty of AHAVTS. And oh yes, there's one more thing. I'm going to try my best to not sound like that professor on Ferris Bueller Days Off. You know, the economics professor played by Ben Stein. You know, when he said, Bueller, Bueller, or something like, we're going to talk about DOO economics, voodoo economics. Believe me, I don't want to sound like him, but if I do, please email me and let me know. Now, the CCNA is Cisco's flagship certification, in my opinion. When Cisco first came out with the certification back in the late 1990s, it was the hottest certification to have, along with Microsoft's MCSC and CompTIA's A+. And currently, it's in its fourth revision. Now, since the time of its inception, the CCNA went through a lot of makeovers, and in my opinion, it looks more like a Tier 2 certification because of the amount of technology that has been created or even innovated at the end of the last century. I mean, we went from POTS lines to basically T1 speeds in our home. So the amount of information was just too robust to maintain the CCNA as its entry-level status. So what Cisco decided to do was introduce a new entry-level certification called the CCENT, which stands for Cisco Certified Entry Networking Technician. It's basically the first of two exams because Cisco decided to take the original CCNA exam and convert it into a two exam format, the first being the ICND-1 and the second being the ICND-2. Now, once you pass the ICND-1, you will earn your CSEC credentials, and when you take and pass the ICND-2 exam, you will earn your full-fledged CCNA. You see, in Cisco's mind, they felt it would give the individual more time to concentrate on a smaller subsection of topics, rather than everything at once. But I'm sure by the time you're finished with this VTS series and you're thanking Alim H for the wonderful techniques he brought to you, and you're studying and you're reviewing and you're hardcore wanting to take that single exam and delve right into Cisco, have no fear, Cisco still maintained the single exam format. So here's a breakdown of Cisco certification tracks and tiers. At first glance, it looks overwhelming, but let's take it step by step. We have the entry tier, we have the associates tier, we have the professional tier, and we have the experts tier. And most recently, Cisco has added the architect tier. So we know now we start off by taking the CCENT, which is the ICND-1 exam. And once we take and pass that exam, we can move on to take the ICND-2 exam in order to earn our CCNA credentials. Now, of course, we can bypass the two exam format and take the single CCNA exam. And in doing so, once we pass, you not only get your CCNA certification, but you automatically get certified for the CCENT. And a question you may be asking yourself is, well, what if I take the ICND-2 prior to the ICND-1? What will I gain or what will I attain? And the answer to that question is nothing. You gain nothing by taking the ICND-2 prior to the ICND-1. You see, once you start on the two exam format, you must pass both exams in order to earn your CCNA. So let's just say that we did take our CCNA exam and passed it. The question you should be asking yourself now is, what do I do next? Well, according to Cisco, they deem their certifications expire every 3 years, which means by the time your third year is up, you have some choices to make, and there's several to choose from. The first choice is you can maintain your current level of CCNA, which is in routing and switching. You take and pass the most current exam and get recertified for another 3 years. A second choice could be to move into a more specialized area of CCNA, such as CCNA Voice, or CCNA Security, or even CCNA Wireless. A third choice could be to move into associate's tier independent of the CCNA exam, such as the CCDA for network design and the CCNA service provider operations. And the fourth choice would be to move into the professional tier with respect to the CCNA level that you have. In this case, it will be the CCNP for routing and switching. Once you're in your professional tier, you begin taking those exams. And this brings me to my second point. There are benefits to recertification. If you take and pass one of the required exams for the CCNP, which I believe now is 3 in total, or if you decide to move into more specialized CCNA with CCNA Voice, Security, or Wireless, or even independent of the CCNA with the CCDA or the CCNA Service Provider Operations and pass those required exams, all of your prior certifications automatically gets recertified. In this case, it is the CCEN and the CCNA. But for our purpose of discussion, we'll stick with these for right now. So by being more specialized in CCNA, you are then able to jump into those respected tiers. For the CCNA security, to now move into the CCNP security, you would have to pass 4 exams. To move from the CCNA voice to the now CCNP voice, you would have to pass 5 exams. And to move from the CCNA wireless to the CCNP wireless, you will have to pass 4 exams. Again, there are benefits to recertification. Once you take and pass one of these professional tier exams, all of the other previous certifications automatically get recertified. So, okay, we're here at the professional tier. Once you attain the certifications, they too expire after 3 years. And the choice you have to make now is, well, should I maintain my current level at the professional tier, or should I attempt the next step and move into the expert tier? For the voice professional, that will be the CCIE voice. For the network professional, that will be the CCIE routing and switching. For the security professional, that will be the CCIE security. And for the wireless professional, that will be the CCIE wireless. Unlike the other tiers, the CCIE expires after 2 years. And there are 2 parts to the CCIE. The first part is a written exam that consists of about 50 to 60 questions. And the second part is a practical lab that is done in Cisco facilities to test your aptitude to become an expert with Cisco. And once again, if you pass the written or both, all of your other certifications are automatically recertified. And statistically, those who pass the CCNA exam pursue the CCNP track first. So let's visit www.cisco.com/certification. In doing so, it brings us to Cisco's IT certification and career path homepage. Here you can see that there are 5 levels or tiers of IT certification that you can pursue, and the 8 career paths or tracks you can take. So let me scroll down a bit, and I'm going to click on the CCEN. And when I click on the CCEN, it brings us to the CCEN homepage that gives us information pertinent to the CCEN exam. It gives us the CCEN learning map, as well as the required training needed in order to earn that certification. So let me click back, and this time I'm going to choose or click on CCNA. Again, this brings us to the CCNA homepage and gives us pertinent information for the CCNA exam. It gives us the course syllabus, the learning map, and if I scroll down a bit, the required training needed and exams in order to earn that certification. But let me go back to the IT certification homepage, and I'm going to click on recertification to show you Cisco's recertification process. It lists the time frames to which all the certifications are valid for. We see that the CCEN, all associate tier, as well as professional tier certifications are valid for 3 years. We can also see that the CCIE are valid for 2 years, as well as any other specialist certification that you wanted to attain. So I urge everyone to visit www.cisco.com/certifications for more information on Cisco certifications and their processes. Okay, so let's talk about the Cisco CCEN, Cisco Certified Entry Networking Technician. Well, by the time you're halfway through the CCNA F.L.I.C and you're studying and you're preparing, you should be ready to take the CCEN exam. And in doing so, you should be able to know the following. Well, how to operate a small data network with just a few users and a few end stations, maybe a few servers and applications, as well as a basic understanding of the difference between an open and closed network. You should be able to implement a small switch network. Well, how do switches communicate with one another? What is a VTP domain? How do you set a VTP password? What is a VLAN? What is STP? What is a trunk? And exactly what layer 2 information is in a frame. You should have a basic understanding of IP addressing and IP services, such as what is a Class A IP address, what is a Class B, and what is a Class C IP address, and what is a standard subnet mask, and possibly what is subnetting, and also how to apply a static route, and IP services such as DHCP, DHCP server, FTP, and Telnet services. You should have a basic understanding of wireless technology. What is a wireless network? How do we implement a wireless network? And exactly what is the difference between data rates associated in wireless networks? How does this integrate with the wired network? What is a BSS, an extended BSS, ad hoc, and SSID? You should have a basic understanding of a small routed network. Well, how many interfaces does a router have? How do we configure an interface on a router? How do we connect dissimilar networks together? And what is router on a stick? You should have an understanding of verifying and implementing WAN connectivity. Well, what type of WAN connectivity do we need between a branch office and another branch office? Or better yet, between a branch office and the main office? Or how about between our homes and the branch office and the main office? As well as what is X.25, frame relay, HDLC, and PPP. We should also have a basic understanding of network security, threats, and mitigation techniques. Well, how do we secure our devices? Should we use passwords? And what type of password schemes should we implement? And physically, should we use locked doors or keycard access? Or how about the environment? How cold or how hot should our environment be? And identify what type of threats are to our network, whether it be internal or external. And when we identify the threat, how do we mitigate it? Via hardware or via software? And also, how do we allow only authorized users to gain access to our networks? And how do we prevent external intruders from entering as well? Now, this is not an exhaustive list of our network environment, but this is what an entry networking technician should know. Okay, so you finished watching the CCNA flick, and you're studying and you're studying and you're preparing, and you might find yourself looking like this guy, all stressed out and asking yourself, what did I get myself into? Or you may be asking the question, okay, now I'm ready to take the exam. What do I do next? So let's talk about the CCNA exam. Well, we all know it comes in two flavors. The first one being the two exam format, and the second being the single exam format. Now, with the single exam format, you start out by taking the ICND one, which has an exam number of 640.822, which is 40 to 50 questions in length, and the duration is about 90 minutes. Now, the variation of questions is because Cisco uses some of these questions for statistical purposes, and these are not counted towards your final score. Once you've finished passing the ICND-1 exam, you'll move on to the ICND-2 exam, which has an exam number of 640.816. This exam is 40 to 50 questions in length, and the time duration is 75 to 90 minutes long. Or instead of taking the two exam format, you can opt to take the single exam format, which has an exam number of 640.802. This exam is 45 to 55 questions in length, and its duration is 90 minutes. In order to register for the exam, you will have to visit www.view.com/Cisco. So let's go to that website now. And once you get to the web page, you see Cisco's homepage on Pearson VUE. The first thing we'll do, we're going to click to the bottom right that says Customer Service. And when we click here, you'll see the different regions to where you can take your exam. So click on the region where you're located. I live in North America, so I will click on the Americas regions. And once I click on the Americas regions, there is a telephone number in order to schedule your exam. Make sure you have the following information. If you have a Cisco identification number, have that available, as well as the exact number of the exam you're going to take, and also the funding method to which you'll be paying for the exam. To the right, you can click on Locate a Test Center in order to find a test center nearest you, because this is where you'll be going multiple times to take multiple exams. You can also schedule a test and reschedule a test, but I think these two are tied into user account and a profile you create. But I like using customer service because I like to speak to a live person when I schedule my exams. So you can visit www.view.com/Cisco for more information on how to schedule your exam. Now, normally I like to get to the test center 10 to 20 minutes early, and there are a few reasons why. The first, is the uncertainty of public transportation on any given day. And even if you're driving, the uncertainty of traffic jams occurring. And I don't want to be late for taking my exam. The second, I want to feel comfortable and get myself situated before I take my exam. And third, I must register with the receptionist to validate that I am taking the correct exam that I scheduled. Now, speaking of receptionist, make sure you have at least two forms of valid identification, one with a signature and the other with a picture. Such valid forms of ID include a driver's license, passport, a major credit card, and social security card. If allowed, you can bring coffee, tea, or water into the testing waiting area or in designated facilities within the test center. At least this gives you a chance to relax before you take your exam. And I can't stress this last point enough. Relax, relax, relax. There is nothing more stressful than going into an exam and saying, oh my gosh, what do I do? What did I get myself into? How am I going to pass the exam? Did I study enough? And etc. Just relax. I remember like it was yesterday when I took my first IT exam. It was an A plus about some 12 years ago. I've never taken a computer based exam before, and when I got there, I thought I knew everything I needed to know for the exam since I studied for almost 5 months straight. And when I took the exam and I got my score, I failed by 2 points. I was so distraught and devastated, I didn't even want to continue to the IT world. I mean, I shelled out all of this money. I took the classes at night and I studied for almost 5 months straight, and I can't even pass this exam, so why should I continue, right? So I spoke to my mentor after the exam, and he said, when you come to class the following Monday, we'll talk about it. So when I seen Floyd, well, the first thing he did was, when he saw how emotional I was, he gave me a big hug to reassure me that I knew exactly what I was doing. And he said something to me that is very important to me, and I'm going to share it with you right now. He said, always go back to the basics. Now, no matter what the question is asking, it's not there to try to trick you or to fool you. Just go back to the basics. Read the question, answer the question properly, and understand exactly what the question is asking of you. And I've taken that advice for every single certification that I have thus far. Some 12 years later, I ascertained close to about 19 certifications in IT. And when I take my exams, that's the first thing I always say to myself: always go back to the basics. So how are we going to prepare for the CCNA exam? Well, the first thing you want to do is to view these clips over and over again. View these clips while you're eating breakfast, and if you can, you could view these clips while you're eating lunch. If you're home and you're bored, you may want to watch these clips in lieu of watching television. And maybe before you go to bed, you may want to watch these clips. But I just hope they don't put you to sleep. But whatever you decide to do, view these clips in order to get the key concepts. The next thing you want to do is get your hands on some Cisco gear in order to get your hands wet by doing some practical configurations and training, because during the exam you might get some scenario based questions that will require you to input some switching and or routing commands. And I'll expand on this a little bit later in a clip called Miscellaneous. Now on the screen, I show a few types of devices that can aid in your preparation for the CCNA exam. They are the 851W ISR and the 871W ISR. Now these integrated service routers are robust all-in-one devices for your small office, home office environment, which have a lot of rich key features. So let me call up a web browser here so we could take a look at these devices. And the first one we want to take a look at is the 851W ISR. Now this integrated service router is a 4-port switch with an integrated Ethernet, fast Ethernet, and wireless technologies of 802.11b and 802.11g. And currently, at the time of this recording, you could get this 851W for $311 online. But I've seen some places that you could get it for about $236 used. So let's scroll down a bit and take a look at some of these key features. As I said before, it's a 4-port switch integrated within the router. It supports wired and wireless connectivity, data link protocols of Ethernet, fast Ethernet, and of course 802.11b and G, network and transport protocols of PPTP, L2TP, IPsec, and PPPoE. Now, some of these protocols may not be necessary for the CCNA exam, but it can aid in your future Cisco certifications, such as CCNP security, where they become more apparent. It also supports RIP version 1 and RIP version 2, remote management protocols of SNMP, Telnet, and HTTP, encryption algorithms such as DES, triple DES, AES, TICAP, and WPA-PSK, and authentication methods like Radius and TACX+ if you have those on your networks. Now, some other key features are DHCP, NAT, VPN support, PAT support, and support for IP version 6. It comes with 64 megs of RAM installed with a maximum of 64 and 20 megs of flash memory installed with a maximum of 20 megs. Now let's take a look at the 871W. Now the 871W is similar to the A51W but with some key differences. Just like the A51W, it's a 4-port switch integrated within. It has Ethernet, fast Ethernet, and supports wireless technologies of 802.11b and 802.11g. And currently at the time of this recording, you could get these online for about $295, but I've seen some places that you can get it as low as $245. So let's take a look at some of the general details. Again, like I said, similar to the A51W, it's a 4-port switch integrated. It supports wired and wireless connectivity. It supports a data transfer rate of 54 megabits per second. And one of the key differences between the 851W and the 871W is that the 871W supports 10 VPN tunnels, network and transport protocols of L2TP, PPPoE. Now, under the routing protocols, just like the A51W, it supports RIP version 1 and 2. But in addition, it supports HSRP, industry standard VRRP, generic routing encapsulation, and policy-based routing. Let's scroll down a bit more. It supports management protocols of Telnet, SNMP version 3, HTTP, and HTTPS. Like the A51W, it supports encryption algorithms of DES, triple DES, AES, and authentication methods like Radius and TACX. It supports DHCP, NAT, PAT, VLAN support, and it also supports several quality of service queuing mechanisms such as low latency queuing, class-based fair-weighted queuing, and fair-weighted queuing. It comes with 120 megs of RAM installed with a maximum of 256 and 24 megs of flash memory installed with a maximum of 52. Now I also listed the Cisco 2514 router here, and the reason why I listed this router is because this is iOS based compared to the previous two where you really can't change the iOS. So let me call up this router here and we could take a look at it real quick. Now the 2514 currently at the time it's recording, you can get these online for $65, but there are some places that you can get it for about $35. And again, it's not rich in feature set like the A51W or the A71W, but the main advantage is that the 2514 supports Cisco iOS, where you can get the robustness of the Cisco command feature set. And this 2514 supports Ethernet and serial connectivity. So let's scroll down a little bit and take a look at some of the general features. Like I said, it's a router, it's wired connectivity, it supports Ethernet and serial connectivity. Now, in the network and transport protocols, it supports IPX, SPX, AppleTalk, but it also supports TCP/IP, even though it's not listed here. On the remote management protocols, it supports SNMP and RMON. For the RAM, it's 4 installed with a maximum of 16 megs, and for flash, is 8 installed with a maximum of 16 megs. Now, there's another router that I didn't list on the screen, and that's the 3600 series router, more particularly the 3620, so let's call it up here real quick. Now, at the time of this recording, the 3620 goes for about $250 online, but I've seen some other sites that you could get it for about $149. And the key difference between the 2514 and the 3620 is that the 3620 requires expansion cards, network modules for connectivity via Ethernet and or fast Ethernet. So let's take a look at some of the general features. Like I said, it's a modular type router that requires a network module in order to support Ethernet and fast Ethernet. It has data transfer rates of 100 megs. It features full duplex capability. The RAM is 32 megs installed with a maximum of 64 megs. And flash memory is 16 megs installed with a maximum of 32 megs. It also has one auxiliary interface and one console interface. I have also listed some affordable switches like the Cisco 2550 and the Cisco 2960 Catalyst switches. Shown on the screen is a 2960 switch that has 2 gigabit uplinks, and I believe this one supports power over Ethernet. Now, since you have routers on your networks, you may as well have some switches in order to interconnect between the two, but also to learn about layer 2 technologies such as spanning tree, BPDUs, VLANs, trunking, and also how to configure a small switch network. Now, aside from the devices on your network, another point on how to prepare for the exam is repetition, repetition, and oh yeah, repeat. You have your devices, you have your routers and switches, and you have these clips. View them over and over again for the key concepts and ideas in order to pass the exam. Also, you may have some supplemental text that can be an addendum to the CCNA F.L.I.C. And since you have your routers and switches, you can practice iOS based commands on a daily or weekly basis, or maybe practice 4 or 5 times a day in order to get them ingrained in the brain. Because some of the questions on the exam, as I mentioned earlier, are scenario based, which will require you to input Cisco iOS based commands, and practicing them will go a long way on the exam. And another thing you want to do is to take notes. Jot down those key concepts because the key concepts are what is important in order to pass the exam. And my last point I have here, practice exams, to use or not to use. Now, I'm not going to endorse any practice exams that you may find online or on the web or from a friend or anything as such. You've probably seen them already, maybe have similar questions, and they can be used as study guides. But as far as my opinion is concerned, I will leave it up to you if you want to use them or not. And again, I'm not going to endorse them, and like I said, to use or not to use. So, okay, you may be asking yourself, well, Alim, how do you study for an exam? And in this slide, I'm going to give you a few of my techniques. And the first one that I have listed here are earplugs. Now, maybe a lot of you have never worn earplugs, or don't even want to wear earplugs, or don't even think about wearing earplugs, except when you go swimming. But earplugs help drown out the ambient noises around you and aid in concentration and focus on the task at hand. When I first started my IT career, I didn't wear earplugs and I got distracted by the noise around me. The people talking, the pens clicking, and even people typing on their laptops. So one day I invested in some earplugs, and I won't lie to you, I was hesitant to put them in at first. But then I realized how well I can concentrate on the subject at hand, and all the noise around me, well, it became oblivious. So, as a suggestion, try to use earplugs and see how they work out for you. Next I have here is to invest in a desk lamp. I normally have a desk lamp that illuminates all my desk or my reading area so I'm able to study and function properly. In my lab, I turn off the room's overhead light so all of the surrounding area will be dark and the only area with light is on my desk. This way I'm not distracted by the events of the room, the contents, my books, my computers, and even my rack of Cisco routers and switches, and etc. This next one may seem kind of weird. Use the same table and chair for all of your studying. Now, think about it this way. You go to the library and you try and find a nice spot where there's adequate light, little noise, maybe a comfortable chair, and a table big enough to accommodate all of your materials. Now, this may take you about a half hour to get comfortable, and then you study. Then you come back to the library the next day and you can't find that same spot. Then you have to search all over again to find a similar spot. This can get tedious and annoying, and quite frankly, you probably don't want to do this every day. Believe me, it has happened to me too. So I recommend that if you're home, locate or create a spot with the same chair and table and get used to that table and chair to a point where you can optimize your studying and any distractions around you will become oblivious. Now, highlighters. I use highlighters on everything. I especially use the yellow ones. I'm not into all those other fancy colors like the red ones, the green ones, or the blue ones. I use the yellow ones because if I want to make a copy of a few pages in a book, say if I'm on the road and I don't want to take the entire book with me and those pages are already highlighted yellow, when I make a copy, the text will not be highlighted. If I use any other color, the text that I highlighted previously will show up on the copy. And for my last certification, I think I went through a box of highlighters, which I believe contains about 10 highlighters in all. So highlighters can be your best friend. Keep a pen and paper handy to jot down those key concepts. I've noticed while studying that when I come across a word I don't know, I don't want that word or words to delineate me from my topic I'm learning. I will jot it down on a piece of paper and then look up its meaning or context afterwards to get a better understanding of what I learned. I know this may seem kind of backwards, but it would help in bringing it all together. And I think I learned this technique back in junior high school from my English teacher, that when I come across a word I don't know, I would write it down and continue reading and look up its meaning afterwards to reinforce what I just read. The same thing applies to your IT studies. If there's certain things that you don't know, well, jot them down on a piece of paper and look them up afterwards. And now we have the greatest tool of all, the internet, where we can get our questions answered as quickly as possible. And this brings me to my last point, a PC. I keep a PC on all the time while I'm studying, and obviously while I'm at work, and also while I'm working on the CCNA Flick, because it gives me an opportunity to find the information I need as quickly as possible. Now, in information technology, a PC is a must, as well as nowadays it's a commodity. So, a PC is very handy in ascertaining information and data as quickly as possible. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list on how to prepare for an exam. These are just a few key concepts that I use. I'm sure you have your own tips and techniques on how you prepare for your exam, and if you're willing to share them, please email me and let me know those tips and techniques that possibly can help me better prepare for an exam, as well as help others prepare for their exams as well. Whew. Well, we got through our first clip in the CCNA Flick. So let's recap. We talked about who's the host of the CCNA Flick and is this handsome gentleman to the right named Alim H. We also talked about what is AHAVTS and the CCNA Flick. We took a look at the brief history of Cisco CCNA, how it started out as an entry-level certification and to where it is now, more of a Tier 2 certification. We also talked about the Cisco certification tiers, how we have to start out with the CCENT or the CCNA and make our way all the way to the CCIE, depending on what certification track you're willing and wanting to take. Then we took a look at the CCNA exam itself, how you can take the two exam format or the single exam, the number of questions, their durations, and where to go and register for the exam. Then we talked about how to prepare for the CCNA exam, some key tips and pointers that can help you in your preparation for the CCNA exam and possibly for any other certifications you're going to take. And last, we talked about how to get the most of the CCNA Flick. I hope this intro to the CCNA Flick was enjoyable, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.